Welcome back to Meaningful Conversations Live. This is Beata Seweryn-Reid. I'm your host, coach, and friend. So please connect and follow me every Tuesday at noon, Meaningful Conversations. Okay, today I have a very special guest, which also became my friend. I love her. She does great things these days for many people. Her name is Jocelyn Bellows, and she is a breakup to wake up coach. Except of that, she is a mom, she's a wonderful friend, like I said, and she's a podcast host. Jocelyn, thank you so much for being here with me. How are you?
Oh, first of all, Beata, thank you so much for having me. And I'm doing wonderfully. It's just another beautiful day in Colorado where I get to spend some time with my friends, having a conversation. Just happens to be live. So good
That's
day.
That's right. Yes. Again, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
And let whoever is with us, please let us know. Yes, I see we are live. And my first question is, well, question, maybe it's more like a statement. Would you agree that waking up even after a night can be painful? Sometimes we don't want to wake up and we just, like, oh, it's too early. No, I'm not in the mood. Couple more minutes, and we keep pushing the snoozing button. Do you agree?
I sure do.
So Jocelyn, did you have in your life moments, because I take it as a metaphor, this to, keeping this snooze button, pushing and pushing until the alarm goes really on. What are the moments or where in your life that you were postponing actually what you wanted to live, actually your joy, your happiness? What were the moments for you where you felt like you were not ready, maybe overthinking? What was it for you?
Overthinking, or just refusing to take that actionable step. The first one that really comes to mind is something that occurred to me several years ago. And I'll make the statement first. Like, my waking up process really began when I walked away from a relationship, a marriage that was no longer serving me. However, there was indications at least a year to a year and a half before. I had, at the time, I was married. We owned a business. I had a career. We had a very young child. He was under a year old. And we were constantly, just going in opposite. We were sort of ships in the night, right? We weren't really communicating. He and I were not communicating well. Having a young child, of course, changes the aspect in what's happening in your world, right? And at the time, our business was doing very well. So he was incredibly busy there. And I was incredibly busy. By the way, I don't like the word busy, which I'll talk about in a moment. I was incredibly busy with my career and actually garnering a merger that was saving the company. Yet everything else in my life was completely bankrupt. I mean, I was miserable. I was exhausted, energetically, physically, emotionally. I didn't understand what any of that meant at the time, maybe the physical part. And I said to myself, okay, I'm going to get back to counseling because I know that there's something that needs to be worked through. And I intentionally attempted to make meetings or create meetings with this therapist on days that my husband could take my son, so that I had a little time for me, that I could go and just check in and be me, be with myself. And he wouldn't do it. He was available, and I was still taking my son down to these appointments because he wasn't willing to watch our child. And like, those were the first flagship moments of me saying, oh, wait a minute, I'm not even being honored to even take time for myself. This is BS, right? And I remember the counselor saying something to me like, are you something enough to, like, are you sure this is what you really want? she was not in a position to say, maybe it's time to go, but
Yeah.
there was enough there, and I knew it. And I think I knew it before walking in this door. And I also I'm going to go off on a tangent here for a moment. That was probably the last time I ever saw a counselor, because the next steps I started taking was actually working with coaches, which we'll talk about later. And the vast differentiation about what counselors and therapists show up as and how coaches show up in your world. But I will tell you, I was hitting the snooze button during that 6-month period that I was seeing this counselor. I knew that I had to have a radical change in my world, and I wasn't going to do it. And I knew it, and I kept putting the poison, I kept eating that poison apple and saying, I'm going to get it better. It's going to get better. If I keep changing myself, the situation's going to get better. And the reality was, I just kept eating that poison apple.
You were basically, what I hear, you were keeping adjusting, or maybe rather fitting in this requirements around you, than listen to your inner voice and saying, yes, no more snoozing buttons, I'm going there. But finally you did break up with what was not serving you. So my next question is, Jocelyn, I'm going to practice your name, you hear?
I know, it's such an easy one, Beata.
Yeah.
I know. I had to, how many times I had to practice saying your name? Now I got it, right? But how many times I practiced before we did your show? I don't even know. But
I have Nancy and Maria with us. Thank you so much. And anyone else who I can't see, please let us know that you are here. So you know, we just hiked with Jocelyn a couple of days ago, and I was calling her name not correctly, and I just realized it a couple of days ago, and I was like, oh my god, I feel so bad, I have to practice that. But she's a loving person, she forgives me. And going back to our conversation, what did you have to break up with in order to live the life that you live today? I see you happy, smiling, shining, and being around you is just this pleasure, because your energy is so pure.
Oh, well, thank you. I really appreciate that. There, honestly, there were so many things, and I'm also going to tell you, I'm going to be very flat out honest with you. There are still stories that I have to break up with, and that I'm still breaking up with. This is not a one-time only, boom, boom, boom. This idea is out of my head and gone forever. Like, this keep coming back until you really break a cycle. So, a couple things that come to mind off the top of my head, the very, very first things, is speaking up for myself, speaking what I need. Within the construct of my marriage, I want to say this for a moment too. The breakup to wake up, when I talk about that, it is not necessarily that you have to break up a relationship external to yourself, right? It's not that you have to end a marriage or end a romantic relationship or end a friendship. Those may be the results of you waking up, but that's not what it's about. It's actually breaking up with relationships with yourself that are no longer serving you. So I want to just be very clear when I say that term, because that's exactly what I mean by that. And so it's breaking up with the negative self-talk about the stories of what someone else might have told you to believe about yourself, or that became your story about how you see yourself showing up. So one of the first things that I had realized, and I'm going to put this in the construct of the marriage, and however, I will say this also existed very much in my work life and in my personal life, because you can't be one person in each one. Like, you're the same person throughout every thread of your life. And if you think that you can be different people throughout, you're fooling yourself, or you're wearing a mask of being someone that you're actually not. So it's really important to be authentic and be true to who you are in every single aspect of your life. And however, though, to go back to your question that I keep getting away from, is the first one was really speaking and owning my truth. So there were a lot of times that I knew that I needed time for myself, or needed to find some time with my girlfriends, which I didn't have very many back then, it blows me away, because where I am today and having a myriad and a huge tribe of beautiful, amazing, strong women that I get to call friends. I mean, I'm blessed beyond belief. And I know that part of the reason why is because I've started to speak that truth and speak up for my needs and my desires and who I am. whether you like it or not. So that was where it began. And it was like, really, I remember that I would get to these points that I knew that I needed that downtime, or I knew that I needed that support, or I knew I needed this thing, or whatever it was. And instead of communicating that with my partner, I didn't. I go have a glass of wine. I'd go, numb on watching TV. I'd eat. I mean, those were how I sort of punished myself. I punished myself and didn't allow for my throat to open and communicate that need. Another aspect of this, again, in the construct of my marriage, while I was the breadwinner in my home, he always worked and never once contributed to a bill. Never once. In our 8 years of marriage and nearly 14 years together, I paid all the bills and he did whatever he wanted with his money. Wow, did I swallow that pill? And so when we got to the point of, all right, we're separating all our assets, and I had to relinquish a good amount of what what I had saved to him, that was a tough pill for me to swallow, and made it very clear that everything moving forward is going to be split 50-50 with every expense that came with our child. That was me standing in my power and saying, this is no longer going to fly. So it's finding that, being, standing in it.
Jocelyn, I'm going to stop you here because you already said so many great things and I want to highlight it. You just said, communicate is what I hear. Communicate your needs, and it's men or women, please do it. Without that, you won't have what you want and you will feel exhausted and you will overwork yourself. Like, you are a very successful woman. You had a successful career before you stepped into this coaching world and supporting others. So, because I work with women and I see it all the time. What is stopping women? What is that shame that is not allowing them to speak their truth? Even just to their part, I'm not saying to the bosses and friends, your partner that you were with him for 8 years, and I've been there too, so even longer. So I know, but I want to hear from you and from your own experience, maybe from your client's experience. What is that wall that is not allowing us to be just ourselves, honest? Like, it's what I need. I need a break for a whatever, glass of wine, or just be with myself. Help me.
At the most base level, it's really, do you really love yourself? Do you really love and honor who you are? And that's such an easy thing to say, right? That's such a beautiful thing.
Right.
And to say I love myself and to actually act within it are incredibly different things. They're very different things. And it always comes from a fear-based state, right? So I know for myself how it iterates because I know my patterns. And it's all about an external relationship with, in a matter of a romantic relationship. If I say this, is that going to piss this person off? Are they going to stick around? Are they going to accept me for who I am and my authentic being? That's often, I find out that very often to be the case. Like right now, I'm really going to be really honest and share what's going on in my world. And I know you and I talked about this in the hike the other day. I had someone ask me to be on a virtual date a couple of weeks ago. And before I agreed to this, now we had talked a few times, but before I agreed to actually do this actual first date, virtual first date, I asked him to do a few things for me. I asked him to take an Enneagram test. I asked him what his love languages were. And if he didn't know them, he actually knew them, which I was really surprised. And I asked him to read a book that's very important to me. It sort of sets the tone of how my belief system. Either read the book or watch the movie. And I asked him that, and I was like, well, it for me, it was, look, this is who I am. And I'm unapologetic about it. These are my belief systems. I want to understand the person I'm communicating with, so that Enneagram and the personality, or our personality is going to be a match, or our love language is going to be a match. And if they're not, it's not that it's, that's not to say that it's like, okay, not okay, but let's go in with my eyes open before I'm going to provide any of my energy into this opportunity or this possibility. I want to own myself first.
So that is beautiful.
Yeah, I did them all.
Right, but so many, especially women, because I work with them mostly. We are so blind, like you said, before we step into new relationships, new jobs, new responsibilities, with this blindness in our eyes, or we kind of sense and see that it's not really serving us, but okay, because we are givers and we want to make everyone to feel good, so we sacrifice our own happiness. So you kind of talk about that, but I want to again highlight it for everyone who is listening, because maybe they missed that point. What are a few warning signs that a breakup needs to happen?
There's a few things. One, even if you don't honestly believe that you're an intuitive, we actually all have that intuition within ourselves. So really, like, if you're in the mix of a relationship that you're just, wow, like this other person is just the bee's knees, and I just enjoy spending time with this person. We laugh, we adventure, we do all these wonderful things together and spend time together and really enjoy it. But in those quiet moments, reflect on the time and space that when you are with that person, and sort of do a visual, like if visual is your thing, or if you're kinesthetic, and how do you feel in those moments of quiet about that other individual? Is there anything that you're seeing that may not be fitting? Sometimes it shows up in pain, and a physical pain in your body. Sometimes it's just like that intuitive hit that you get that thought and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm not really receiving what I need. Sometimes it's the language that they're using or the questions they ask. So in my last relationship, gosh, I might feel like a little bit like Taylor Swift. I might just start talking about all my relationships and all the things. But I'm going to use myself as an example. So in my last relationship, we had gone away on our very first weekend excursion. And, this was sort of like, this is the first person I really had been in a relationship with since my marriage had ended. And it was still early on in this new thing. And gosh, we were having such a great time, and it was so easy. And I remember that I'd asked him to bring snowshoes because we were going skiing. We were going up to the mountains in the wintertime, and I couldn't ski because I had actually broken my elbow, or dislocated my elbow days earlier. So I wasn't able to ski. So I was like, bring snowshoes so we can do an activity together. And he didn't have any, but he was like, oh yeah, I'm sure I can ask somebody. He never did it. And so as we're getting ready to go, he didn't have the snowshoes. And I will tell you, like, and even retelling this story, like, I'm feeling my heart sort of palpitating over this, because that initial response that I had was a reaction. I didn't react outwardly. But I did have a reaction. My response was like, I'm sort of disappointed. I thought that this, like, to me, by you doing this, taking this action, meant that you wanted to be including me in an activity that we could do together. And so he didn't bring it. That evening, as we're going to bed, he actually asked me the question. He's like, how does that make you feel? Like, am I being selfish? And I'll be honest with you, in that moment, I was not honest with him, because I wasn't honest. I was honest with myself, but I wasn't honest with him. I was like, no. I was like, I don't think you're being selfish. I think you just forgot. I said something, but it wasn't what I was really feeling.
All right.
And I knew then
that it's not.
That it was that I was being inauthentic with myself. So that, and I say that, like, it's also important though, like, you hear these things, but also forgive yourself and give yourself grace, because in the beginning, when you're starting to really form your boundaries and being strong in your will, and strong in your being, understand that takes some time, because it's all sorts of, there's been conditioning that has been happening over your lifetime. So for me, like, this happened when I was 42. This was just last year that this particular situation occurred. So for 40 years of my life, I had all these things that were told to me that I needed to be this other person. I needed to be this other way. I mean, more demure and not speak my truth. And I'm just a fireball who's like running all over about everybody. And, those are all stories that I have to still resolve within myself, right? I'm not angry with myself for answering the way I did. I forgive myself for that situation. I acknowledge it. I learn from it. And now I get to grow.
That is very important what you just said, because from my own experience, I think the biggest breakup that I had to do, it was with the stories that were not even mine. The stories that I was told, and I was just adding to it, that I have to be this polite, the girls and women, they need to sacrifice, and the men, they have their own world, and you just take care of the family. It's BS. Like, it's the stories that are not true. You have to decide what is true for you. Like Jocelyn said, you have to be authentic to yourself and find out. And I think when you are talking about it, what are your values? What do you value in yourself so much that it's not negotiable? And you have a beautiful story. And for me, also, the time you said anger was one of my biggest signs, and I did not recognize that for relationships that were not working anymore, for the jobs that I did not enjoy anymore. I was angry, but I was not angry with the outside world really, but with myself, that like you said, the intuition was telling me, like, you are the one who is not taking responsibility for your own life. Don't point the fingers. But my mind was still going, no, it's the world, it's them. They should know that I deserve something better. So you said so many great.
Can we stay on that moment for just a moment about the anger piece?
Yes.
So, and I know that our audience can identify with something in their own life like this, right? So one piece that occurred for me going through my divorce process, I did hold on, in the early days, held on to a lot of resentment, a lot of anger, because it was that buildup over time, spent the money, not being respected, like all the things, right? There was a moment at which, because at that point I started working with my first coach, that something clicked inside my head. The more anger I held on to towards an external force didn't hurt him. I mean, maybe it did, but we weren't in communication. It just injured me. It injured me. So that moment that I got to take that backpack off, that proverbial backpack off, and say, it doesn't matter, because it never actually did. I was released. And now there was no reason to hold on to something that no longer served, because it didn't serve. It certainly wasn't going to resolve or change anything about the situation with him in a positive way, because in a negative way. It did actually change in a positive way, because now I got to release that anger, that frustration, that rage, and I came into new conversation with cleanliness, with love. We're raising a child together. He's only 5 years old. We're not doing this dance for a while, right? And I had to, for me, take responsibility for how am I going to show up in this new relationship, in a separate situation where, whatever happens in his life, in my son's life at his dad's house, I have to trust that my son is safe. And I know that he is. I actually do trust that. And I get to make my own decisions, and I get to have a new formed relationship with this man who is the father of my child. I don't even like using the word ex. It's very abrasive to me, because he just happened to be someone I formerly spent time with in my life.
Yeah, and I think we talked about that when I was in your podcast. No matter what, you are not physically together, but you will be a family till the end of your life because of your child. And I have one more question, but before that, I want to acknowledge our listeners, Dom, Kip, Nancy, Garland, Jennifer, and if any of you, if you have any questions to Jocelyn, please do right now, and she will respond after the next question, because soon we have to go. So you have time for your questions now when I'm asking my question. Jocelyn, to me, seems like you are living life on your own terms. And maybe other listeners, they don't really know what does it mean to live life on my own terms. I can see it because I was able to get to know you a little bit, and I'm also for a while in the coaching industry, so I just feel it from you. But we, like you mentioned before, we wear a lot of masks. So how do you know that someone is living life on their own terms?
So there's a question that you can ask yourself is, does this, what I'm about to do, make me happy? Does it bring me joy? Or does it not? You know, does it bring me joy? Does it bring me happiness? Does it bring me light? Does it bring me closer to the person that I really enjoy being? Those are wonderful questions to ask yourself. With anything, like if you have been asked to go out and meet friends for a drink, okay, right now that might not be an option, right? But you know, in pre-COVID days, we got to do that. You know, and let's just say, like, you really want to spend time with some of these people, but you're just not really feeling up to being social. And you go anyway because you want to see these people, and then you come home and you're like, I feel rotten, like you feel run down or whatever. Like, recognize that that's happening in your world, because the likelihood is you didn't actually listen to yourself. Maybe it really wasn't in that moment, that wasn't the right decision for you. Something that I did early on when I moved out here is I actually made a list of places that I wanted to go and see and explore. And I just made the list, and then I started taking action on them. In fact, I launched my show. I launched the idea of my show on a drive out to Hanging Lake. I had no idea. On that journey, I was just going to Hanging Lake. That was my decision to live life on my terms. It was in that 6-hour drive that I had all this stuff streaming through my head that, oh my gosh, I'm going to have a podcast, and this is what it's going to be called, and these are the first 20 guests I'm going to ask to be on my show, and this is what it's going to be about. I didn't know that coming in, but the point I really want to illustrate is I took action in something I wanted to do.
I love that. I love that. I don't see any questions, but you still have a chance to ask Jocelyn privately, because she will tell us where to find her. So what is the easiest way to connect with you?
Absolutely. So you can find me on Facebook. It's facebook.com/breakup to wake up coach, or on my personal page as well at facebook.com Jocelyn Bellows.Whitehead. So it's JOCELYN Bellows BELLOWS.Whitehead, or Breakup to Wake Up Coach. Those are both great ways to find me, and then you can message me in either of those locations, or you can follow me on Instagram at What's Your Leap, or you can find my oh my gosh, I can't even think of my podcast. Oh yeah, my podcast on anchor.fm, What's Your Leap as well.
That's right, and please do connect with Jocelyn. She is wonderful. You can feel her energy. I love it. You know, surrounding yourself with people that are on your level of energy or even higher, it's amazing, because it's contagious. And thank you so much for being with me today here. And everyone who is listening, please, I'm open for your feedback. Let me know what else would you want me to talk about here. And if you are interested in bringing back Jocelyn, I will do it, and I believe she will find the spot for me.
I'd love to.
Yes, and I would like to end this beautiful conversation with Eckhart Tolle quote. It's not uncommon for people to spend their whole life waiting to start living. You know, you may postpone, but life will not. So take responsibility for your own life. Listen, go back to this conversation and listen what Jocelyn said. Communicate your needs and break up with, first of all, the relationship that is not working for you. And it tends to happen that it's a relationship with ourselves first. Thank you so much for being here with me again. Take responsibility for your own life. Thank you. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you.